Okay, so we've had a couple of questions come in. I want to look at that for a moment. Here's one. Dr. Dog, how often should I check my Bolt score? Every day, or is that too much? Um, I've talked about this before. To me, a Bolt is one of the foundational pieces of this whole work. Um, and the Bolt can be used in two different ways. The first way is that it's a test, right? It's a reference point. You do the bolt and you get a number. And then that number can kind of tell us how triggered you are by CO2 rises, right? It's not a maximum breath hold. So it's not a a test. And that's where people get it wrong. They get competitive with it and they try to do a maximum breath hold. And that's not what it is, or that's not what it was ever meant to be. We we inhale naturally, we exhale naturally, we pinch our nose to make sure you're holding your breath and not letting air slip out, and you count, hopefully with a stopwatch, but you could count your head if you're doing it for the exercise of it. And then when you get that first trigger to breathe, you take a breath. So you let go of your nose. And when I do it, I feel that first trigger, and you have to discipline yourself that the test is over there. You want that number. You don't want the inflated, exaggerated number. Okay, we want the real number because you could push past that. So now you're suffering and struggling. You had that first initial breath urge to breathe, and you ignored it, which is incorrect. That's not the bolt. And you went past it. You're like, now, like, and you're struggling and you're trying to will yourself to continue. And I think about when I was a child, for a few years, we had a pool in our backyard, and my brother and I would compete, and my father often was watching this. We would hold our breath and try to swim one length, then two length. It wasn't a very big pool before we came up for air. And I remember one day I got to three lengths. So it was there, back, and there, three full lengths. And oh my God, I remember that last 20 feet to get to the wall. I was suffering. I was doing this maximum breath hold. And that's not what the bolt is. So the bolt is when you feel that first urge, I want you to let go and get a number, because that's going to tell us how your nervous system is responding to urgency with rises in carbon dioxide. When we hold our breath, we're depriving ourselves of fresh new oxygen. And conversely, our CO2 starts to come up. Our brain triggers like breathe, breathe, and wants you to breathe. But and that's when the test should be over. But if you muscle past that, if you push and suffer past that, we're now working towards a maximum breath hold, like the child that's swimming in the swimming pool, holding their breath, doing an underwater swim. You miss the opportunity to find that reference point of when your brain triggers a kind of like a little mini crisis, an urgency to grab air because of a fluctuation in CO2. I need that number. So that's part one of the bolt. Part one of the bolt is doing it to get a number so that I have that number and I can work with it and use it as a gauge on how you're doing. So here, let me flip through this. If that number is under 10 seconds, a true bolt, not a maximum breath hold, that means you have a very poor response to fluctuations of CO2. You're not doing well, you're dysfunctional. From 10 to 20 seconds, we would call that poor response. So very poor is under 10 seconds, and from 10 to 20 seconds is very poor. From 20 to 30 seconds, so let's say your score was 24 seconds, that would be moderate. That's pretty good, actually. I would be happy if you could get into that area. on a true bolt score, not a maximum breath hold. 30 to 40 would be very good, and above 40 would be excellent. My teacher, Dr. Paul Sly from Canada, I've had a lot of teachers, but he was the one that I studied with when I was learning the oxygen advantage breathing certification that I went through. And he works with professional hockey players. He's in Canada and works with a lot of these National Hockey League, NHL players. And he said he works with them because they're elite level athletes and they're trying to master breath work. So this breath work works great for apnea and snoring people, but it also works great with elite level athletes. And he said to get them to have a true change in their Bolt score could take months. Let's say they're coming in at a 30 on their first try because they're athletes. For them to get above 40 could take 6 months. Not a maximum breath hold. They might be able to maximum hold their breath for 90 seconds or even 2 minutes. But you're missing the idea of the bolt. So you have to feel the bolt. I want you to go back and do the bolt differently now with the concept of when do I feel that urge? And it wouldn't be bad to also know what your maximum breath hold is. Like I have a pretty good maximum breath hold. And I would say my true bolt is in probably like 35. I can hit 40 sometimes. So let's get to the second part of that question. So the first part is we have a reference point, right? We know what our number is and we do it enough till you really know your number. Because if you just do it once, you're going to be confused. Like when was that first urge to breathe? So I want you to do 2 or 3 of them and the next day do another 2 or 3 and the next day do another 2 or 3. And after about a week, you'll kind of know your number. You'll go, yeah, I used to push too hard or I wasn't doing it the right way. And you'll get a sense of it after you've done enough. It might take 10 or 20 of these bolt repetitions for you to be able to go, no, I can feel it when I have that urge. I know what that urge means. That's great. That's your bolt score. But it wouldn't be bad to also know what your maximum score is. You could try that. You just simply hold your breath as long as you can. And when you're about to die, take your score, see how many seconds that is. The other way that we use the bolt is it just as an exercise. So I like my patients to do it every day. I still do it every day, and I've been doing it for about 12 or 13 years, except the days that I have to get up immediately to pee. Too much information, right? Nobody wants to hear that. Okay, so what I mean by that is my alarm clock goes off. Usually around 5:30 in the morning is when I get up. If I don't have to spring out of bed and run to the bathroom, I lay there for another minute. I turn off the alarm clock and I check my bolt and see where it's at first thing in the morning. The reason I do it then is it's when I won't forget and it's consistent. So I like being consistent with it. Last year, my bolt score was higher. I was training for an ultra endurance event. I did this 28-mile high altitude endurance event in Utah at something like 12,000 feet altitude. And my bolt score was like 43, 44 back then, like my true bolt. And now that I'm not training as hard, it's probably around 33 to 35 on average. But yes, I do want you to do bolt every day if you can. And then, not only will you know your number, but you'll also build up that resiliency and start to teach your brain not to panic when it first feels an urge that you need breath. I hope that helps. Okay. Let's look at another question. And that came into my email. Oh, okay. So this says, if I'm already using a CPAP, does breathing training still make sense for me? And I have this new favorite saying that whether you're on a CPAP or any device, you still need to train the human being wearing it. So some of you might be on a CPAP machine. Some of you might be told you should be on a CPAP machine. Some of you might need to be on a CPAP machine the rest of your life. Some of you might have obstructive sleep apnea. Some might have central sleep apnea. where the brain is not getting the message to the airway muscles to stay open and breathe. That could happen from heart disease, a heart attack, a heart crisis, or a stroke, as some of the examples. It could also happen from different type of medications and therapy where that functionality is sabotaged by either an event like a crisis event like a stroke or a heart attack, or it could also chemotherapy could knock that out, or radiation therapy we've seen, in patients of mine over the last years. So they have the muscles to hold the airway open, but the brain is not messaging them to breathe and in. So their motherboard, or the central, the CPU of the computer, is not functioning well enough for someone to sustain normal breathing at night. So that person needs to be on a CPAP or an APAP, or a BiPAP machine, which are the different type of forced airway devices. Yeah, they're good. I always say that CPAP works. It's just for the people that might have a chance to move their way off of it. That's a challenge, and it's fun to see what people are capable of. I've gotten over 100 people off of CPAP, APAP, BiPAP machines, oral devices, people that were able to not do surgery to get an implant put in their chest with a wire fed through to the back of their tongue that it stimulates the tongue and the hypoglossal nerve to fire all night. And that reminds me of that dog collar you put on your dog. So when it goes near the edge of your property, it gets zapped. So it's the same technology, basically. It's more sophisticated, but it zaps your tongue on an interval so that your tongue doesn't collapse and you don't go into obstructive sleep apnea. And that works too, not perfectly, but it works. But I wouldn't want to sleep with that type of stimulus zapping my tongue all night. And I heard it's hard for some people to get used to it. And some people, it drives them crazy. And other people, they don't notice it and it's perfect. So all of this stuff works. It's just, you got to choose your poison, right? So getting back to the question, if I'm already using CPAP, yeah, I think if you're on this continuum, if you're an extreme snorer, remember, snoring is not just a funny, annoying thing that your uncle or your grandfather does or you have. It's an indication that you have collapsing airway, that you're on the continuum of having some serious problems. And I was this extreme snorer and I fixed it. It took me, I don't remember exactly because I wasn't really measuring, but at least 9 months, probably closer to a year, where I went from being an extreme snorer to doing all these exercises, practicing the bolt every day, doing my myofunctional, practicing Buteyko breathing method, and on that journey to fix that. So I don't know if I would have full blown sleep apnea. My dad does. He's 88 years old, almost 89. He's been on a CPAP for 15 years. He likes the CPAP. I don't know. It looked like I was sure on the road to getting there. Maybe I still might get it one day. Maybe I won't. But with the work that I've done, I think I'm really safeguarding myself to lower the statistical odds of me being in that situation. 62 years old, and I've been working on this for like 10 years, or I handled it 10 years ago, is what I should say. So I think breathing training makes sense. Breathing training makes sense for people with asthma, for people with anxiety, for people that are extreme snorers, for people that have any type of apnea. And whether you're on a CPAP or not, I think train. It's rehab, it's training, it's going to the gym. I go to the gym. I also do this breath work all the time. Another question, what's more important for improving my breathing? Would it be the nasal breathing, the CO2 tolerance, or tongue strength? I think all three. Something I'm going to launch hopefully in the next 2 weeks, because I've already been writing it and working on it, is going to be a new thing that I'm going to offer, which is kind of a self-assessment test that you could do and score yourself for 3 different areas. Breathing, so that would be nasal breathing, CO2 tolerance, that evaluates and gives you a score on your breathing. The next area would be muscles or myofunctional exercises, tongue strength, tongue posture. Is your tongue most of the day on the roof of your mouth, or does it collapse anytime you're not noticing it? Down here. So tongue posture, tongue strength of the tongue, mouth, throat, lips. And then the last category would be sleep. I kind of call it sleep hygiene, but how well you're sleeping along with lifestyle elements. So some people might need to lose a little weight. Some people might need to work on their stress. And so it measures those three buckets for you: breathing, myofunctional strength and stability and resiliency. And the third one is sleep and lifestyle. And it gives you a score. Then you would know your score and you could work in those buckets. All three buckets are important, but knowing which is your highest priority would allow you to dial in on the exercises that would match that. Another thing that I will do shortly after launching that assessment that everybody can get is on the premium level, which right now you could upgrade to. If you're on a free account, you could always move to that. And we would do specific days for those buckets. So for example, maybe I'll, on a Tuesday, either myself or one of my staff members might teach a 20-minute workshop every Monday on myofunctional specifically. So if you know that's your highest priority of need in your training because you did the assessment, then you're like, no matter what, I'm not going to miss Monday's call, even if you have to catch it as a recording and watch it at another time. Or you might go, oh, I know that breathing is my thing, so I don't want to miss the breathing call. Now, if your first priority is breathing and your second priority of what you need the most for you specifically is the muscle work, then you might do both, but you definitely don't want to miss your highest priority. And I find working privately with clients over the last 6 years is that it's not that it's an 80-20 rule, but it's good to focus on your highest need. And then secondarily, your next priority. And tertiary or thirdly is your next priority down. And that helps you be more efficient and expedite results. I hope that helps. Anyway, I hope that's good for today. Those were the questions that came in, and thank you for tuning in to this today. And there's more to come. We have a lot more training coming up. I'm trying to fine tune it and start to make it more efficient for people. Okay. Thank you.